Right, here we go. The 2 coats had plenty of time to dry. You can see that surface finish isn't great, but that's what we're going to sort out now. So final sand on all these inside edges. Just doing that by hand. Basically, I'm using the reflection of the paint like a guide coat until all the glossiness has disappeared. And it's incredibly tedious, especially in the exterior coating that doesn't sand particularly well. They're quite grippy and flexible. Yeah, that section there is kind of what we're aiming for. You can see in that one, you got these little dimples from the finish. So that's what we're trying to sand out. You have to be incredibly careful of all the edges so that you don't go through this paint layer. If you go back through to the bare wood, then the next coat you put on will raise the grain and you'll then have to sand it back again. I'm just using a foam pad to sand around the sort of rounded edges of that bead. Try not to press too hard. It doesn't matter about the face because I'm going to sand them in once the frame's all assembled. It's just these inside edges I want to get perfect, where it's going to be really difficult to sand once that frame is all glued together. With the rebate side, I'm just running along with an electric sander, and I'm not too fussed about this side. There's only a tiny little bit that's visible along this front edge because there's a staff bead that's going to sit. The profile is pretty much going to be exactly like that on there, so we're only going to see sort of 5 or 6 mil along that front edge. So that's the bit I'm focusing on as I'm sanding. So I've got a full-on morning now sanding all these bits. It takes ages. See there where that I haven't quite sanded that one in perfectly because there's a bit of a moulding ripple there. So without this final sand, that would have showed through in the finish and looked awful with a little bit of a ripple in the paint finish. You see where I've gone through the layers of paint there, so that's like a previous coat I've gone into, sanding that ripple out, but I've got it. Everything is pretty much dry and sanded apart from these 3 that I've just hung up and painted again. They're the ones that have got rebates and stuff on both sides. The first coat I did one side at a time, but it's too slow, so I put a hook in the end at the top, hung them up and painted all the way around it in one go. They're just going to take a bit longer to dry because obviously the first 2 coats I did one side at a time, so they're a bit behind the others. So while they're drying, I'm going to get the beading out for the frame and for the door. So got beadings around the panel here. It's called a staff bead, exactly the same as you'd have on the sash window. And then on the inside, we've got some glazing beads to get out for the door. The door glazing beads are going to look like this here, so it'll be a mini version of the staff bead. So I've got around 31 mil to like the face of the panel or the face of the glass. It's a 24 mil unit and I'm bonding it fully in. So I'm doing a wet sealant in the pack rebate, pushing the glass into it, and then fully sealing the outside of the glass with, again, a wet sealant. So I'm going to allow 2 millimeters for that. They're 24 mil units. I'm going to allow 26 mil for my glazing. And then this is exactly the bead I'm going to have on the outside that's going to hold the glass in. And I want that bead, when it's pinned in place, to sit just shy of that edge, somewhere about there. That's about the perfect location, 1 mil back. Okay, so here's some of the rip offcuts for the beading from the door and the frame. So just to tessellate it, just to find the best way that works really for cutting these beads out. So that was pretty much a square piece. So I'd look to cut the door beads out of that one. I'll get 15mm times 3 here. And then I'll get 2 widths of about that 21mm out of each one as a finished plain bead. So I know I've got 6 lengths there, full length of that bead, and I can work that out from there. Just try and use all them offcuts up from your big rips. When I used to do a lot of joinery and be pricing up jobs, you know, on a fairly tight price basis, I'd price something like a door frame. If it was a 4-inch wide door frame, say this is a 6-inch wide door frame, which is what it is, you'd work all your timber out as 8-inch pieces, and the bit that you cut off would always give you your beadings and stuff, like a bit extra, and that'd work out for a bit of losses as well. For something like doors and frames, I always worked out on like a 2.5 by 6-inch price, and you generally use like a 5-inch door style and a 4-inch piece for the frame. They give you them 1-inch and 2-inch offcuts to get all your beadings and extra bits like weather bars and stuff like that. So my method here is to plane the beads flat, thickness them down in as wide strips as possible, and then rip them down on the bandsaw. Then I end up with individual beads planed to a size that's about 0.5 mil bigger than my finish size on the faces that I want to sand them. So I can plane 0.5 mil off through the wide belt, and that'll give me a perfect finished bead. So in this case, the only face that I need to sand will be this top edge, because the face here is getting machined into a staff bead profile through the spindle. Just going to whip them through the wide belt with a 120 grit paper with the padding gauge, so the sanding action of the belt is smoothed out over a wider surface area and you don't get the ripples from the sanding wheel. And onto the spindle with that Euro cutter block. It's the same one that I used to cut the glazing bar with, if you remember that in the frame, because that glazing bar is going to mimic the beads in the door. I'm machining it face down, so my sanded face, which is my finished face, is going to go down to the bed. So I'm going to have to keep the cutter block above and just line the edge of that knife up with the bottom of my timber. That's about right. I can push a pattern through to make any adjustments if I need to. So just setting the wheels up. You want like I've got about 12mm gap from the fence to this wheel. That one is about 3 or 4mm off the fence. So I've got a slight angle like this as they turn. I actually try to push the wood in sort of that direction so it keeps it nice and tight against these fences. That first wheel just needs to be close enough to the fence to grab the bit of wood basically, but it needs to be far enough away that the cutter doesn't catch it as you end up milling this wheel down like I've done a few times in the past. Then you set your height. You want about 5mm of spring compression on the wheels, so set the wheels 5mm lower than the thickness of the timber. So they're the 18mm staff beads with the 31mm for holding the glass and the panels in, and they're for the glazing beads in the door. If you just hold your finger with a decent pressure on the piece of timber as it's feeding through the machine, you should be able to tell how it's machining. Like you can feel whether it's vibrating or chattering, and that'll sort of tell you what type of surface finish you're going to get from that piece of wood. So you want it to feed through nice and smoothly and almost have a polish finish off the machine. Just means you're going to have less sanding before you go into paint and also the start and stop settings. So as it comes off one fence and goes onto another, I want to be absolutely spot on so you don't get a little like snipe in the end of the bead, because they're a real pain to sand out. And when you cut your beads off to length, you don't always see them, and then you only see them when it comes out in the paint finish, by which time you've probably not left enough on your bead to be able to cut it out. So I'm just going to run a quick sharp edge off these. There was a couple on the smaller glazing beads where there's a little bit of a edge, you can see like there on that one. There's just a little bit of an edge once a bit of sandpaper running over it. Okay, so this is my beads spraying rack. I put beads on here based on how I want them to finish once I do my finish spray pass. So I want them to sit in this orientation, kind of how they're going to sit in the frame. So most paint is going to be on this surface here, so that's nice and good to sand to flat finish, the thickest coat on it. And the round that you see is the round that you spray last, so you've got no risk of touching it, and that is going to be the two best faces of the bead. In order to get finish in that position, you've got to start in that position, spray the back, spray the bottom, spray the back, spray that face, and then finish by spraying that top edge. Sitting there nicely and can dry. Nice bit of air circulation around them. Just make sure that they're not touching the back rail, like they're a little bit away from here. So there we go, that's all we've got time for today. So just a load of preparations for gluing the door frame together. Bit of denibbing to do in the morning on the bits that I sprayed this morning, and they can dry overnight. Denib them in the morning, then gluing this frame together after the dentist. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like if you're enjoying this one. I've had loads of comments. Can't believe the amount of comments on the videos in this series. So yeah, genuinely, thank you very much. It's really inspiring to keep doing the videos when they're so well received.